If you say you're gonna fucking kill someone, fucking do it. Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. It has been so long since I've done literally anything. I don't know why. As I've said a million times before, and I'm sure I'll say a million times again, I get in these funks. I'm just like, I don't want to film any videos. I don't want to do anything, especially because I just started going back to school this last semester. So I was just super busy on top of everything else with my life, and I'm back on night shift, so always dead when I'm on night shift. But I kind of got some inspiration lately and just decided that if I'm feeling this way, I need to go ahead and do it and just stop holding myself back from it. So what I'm going to be doing is over the next couple of videos I'm going to do, which Lord knows how long that'll take, I'm going to be talking about people on death row or that were on death row. So I focus mostly around Nevada and, you know, just places around there. If you guys do have any other cases that you have suggestions for, you can go ahead and send them in my comments or in a message on any of my social media, which is in the description box, and I'll add it to my list of things I should probably get to doing. But for the last year, I've really wanted to cover death row. Like ever since I started doing Jane and John Doe's last year, I was just like, this is something I'm super passionate about. And obviously these are going to be very bad cases. Like people did really bad things obviously to get onto death row, and so it's very graphic. And so I just want to warn you guys about that before you guys even start this video. Like if you are not down for that, probably don't watch. I won't show anything graphic, and so it's just going to be words just so you're like totally prepared for it, and I'll give you a little bit of warnings before I talk about it so you can skip if you still want to watch the video. But let's go ahead and talk about the death penalty. So currently in the United States, 29 states and the US government and military have the death penalty. Having the death penalty and actually using the death penalty though aren't the same thing, as you'll see in this video. It's actually been very hard to kill someone coming of recent years. I'm gonna go ahead and put up a list on the screen of states that do have the death penalty just so that you're aware. The last execution that was in the United States as I'm filming this, which is on December 21st, we'll see when it goes up, but the last execution was actually on December 11th of 2019, so actually very recently, and it was Trevino Rennels in Texas. Again, this is about to be graphic, so I'm just going to give you a little blurb about what he did. He sliced the neck down to the bone of a 38-year-old prison supervisor, Stanley Wiley, in 2003. So he was actually already in prison, but not on death row, and then killed one of the supervisors. So then he got put on death row and just finally got put to death. So that is the most recent case in the United States. In Nevada, the last execution by lethal injection was in April 26, 2006. It has been 13 years, almost 14 years, since Nevada has killed anybody on death row, and we have over 80 people sitting on death row in Nevada. So we will talk about Daryl Mack in another video because he is a Nevada, or was a Nevada resident, so we will get to him later, so don't worry about that. Today's video is specifically going to be on Scott Dozier. So you guys might have heard about Scott Dozier in the news because he literally broke the entire country with what he did, and not just like his crime, but how he proceeded after his crime while he was sitting in prison. So he went by multiple names like Chadwick, Quincy, Chad, Wyatt, and Raymond. And Raymond was actually his middle name. He was born on November 20th, 1970 in Boulder City, Nevada, which is like right next to Las Vegas if you are not aware. And he's been described as literally by every single person. Nobody said that they expected this at all, as like caring and thoughtful, which I think it's always the people that you least expect that end up being like this. His dad worked for federal water projects in the West, and Scott had two siblings, a younger brother and sister. Scott's grandpa was in the Air Force and had committed suicide when Scott was 5, and they were really close. So that has definitely pushed him in a lot of ways and hurt him in a lot of ways and made his life more difficult, which, you know, we all lose somebody at some point, but, you know, like a lot of us handle it very differently. Also, as a young boy, Scott would later disclose to one of his psychologists that he was molested between the ages of 5 and 7 by a teenage boy, and he never released the name of who it was, but obviously that's very traumatizing, and especially if you're hiding it from like your family and your loved ones and your friends, like nobody's there to help you like go through it or get you the right help. So that had to be so hard to go through. And I'm not saying any of this is an excuse for his actions, but you know, it is something to bring up as to why people get this way. First time anybody really noticed an issue with Scott was when he was in 8th grade, and he actually got in trouble and had to go to a juvenile camp called Spring Mountain Youth Camp, which is a juvie in Boulder City. It doesn't say what he did, but I don't know. I know my brother went to juvie when I was a little kid, and it was for drugs, so knowing the story, which we will get into obviously, it could possibly be for that. And then when he was in high school, his family moved from Boulder City to Phoenix, and that's where Scott got a job in an Italian restaurant and where he graduated high school from in 1989. Not only was Scott like supposedly thoughtful and caring, he was also an artist. Like, he had a really good, stable family. His parents, like, very, very supportive of him and, like, would pay for painting lessons and pretty much for anything he wanted to do. They were like, let's do this, like, we love you, we're gonna do what we can for you. And I think that that's really important, that, you know, you have a system, especially when you know how broken his life was in other ways. So for him to have a system at all probably turned out better than he could have. Scott enlisted in the U.S. Army on November 16th, 1990, and he left on August 10th, 1992, and was honorably discharged. So he just did a really quick stint in the military. You know, that's pretty common. Like, it doesn't make him a bad person. He was honorably discharged, so they obviously had no reason to see, like, oh, he's a piece of crap. Like, he wasn't doing anything at that time. And while he was in the military, he actually married a woman named Angela Drake on January 1st, 1991. And they met when they were 15 in Boulder City. Angela was a professional dancer and singer at a Las Vegas strip production, EFX. They had one son, Ashton, in 1993, and they got divorced after not very long, like after a couple of years, and Angela ended up remarrying and having 3 daughters, and took Ashton and those kids and moved to Hawaii. But Scott was still very involved in Ashton's life, and actually was even involved in the girls' lives. Like, they would all send him cards and drawings and stuff for his birthday, and like, he loved that. You know, but this good life wasn't going to last very long for Scott, unfortunately. In 1995, Scott was arrested in North Las Vegas for possession of Valium, meth, and Ropanol. I think that's how you pronounce it, but Ropanol is the like common date rape drug. And then in 1998, the home that he was living in on Cinderella Lane in Las Vegas actually exploded under mysterious circumstances, and it's pretty well believed that it was due to a meth lab, but nobody will confirm that, like not even police or anything like that. And in this explosion, it gravely injured someone who was living there named Casey Kimball, and she actually lost her right arm below her elbow and her right leg below her knee. But, you know, she even never came forward and said, like, hey, he was, like, cooking meth or anything like that. By his mid-20s, most of his income was from the production and sale of meth in the states of Nevada and Arizona, which would be the 2 states that he would be convicted of murder. So the first case that we're going to talk about is Jason Griffin Green. He was murdered around July 27th, 2001, and his remains were found in a plastic container in the desert north of Phoenix. This was actually brought to the attention of the court. So they had already thought he had killed a man named Jeremiah Miller at this time, but we'll get into that in a second. And they were trying to figure out how they could pin Jeremiah Miller's murder on Scott Dozier. And a man named Gary Powell brought to the attention of like the court, he was an incarcerated drug associate who had known Scott for like over a decade, but he told the police that he helped Scott bury Jason Green's body, and that proved that Scott was capable of killing Miller. Gary Powell actually ended up leading authorities to the body of the 26-year-old, and the body was completely mummified in this plastic container. And so they found the body on September 23rd, 2002, just outside Phoenix City, and it was in a shallow grave covered with a large wooden spool. I think you guys kind of know what I'm talking about. I'll put up a picture on the screen. I think it's really weird to mark a grave because, I mean, you want it to be as inconspicuous as possible, so putting a big marker on it, like, people might like move that or something and like notice something's off. So I just feel like that was kind of dumb. But pretty much what the court thought was that Green was like bent over reading a magazine after like examining his body, and that Scott had shot him in the head. Apparently it was really difficult, according to Gary, to hide Green's body because he was 6'2", and so first Scott actually hid him in his closet and asked some friends for help. And then they ended up wrapping his body in plastic, like kind of Dexter style, and had one of the meth users that he sold to, Roy Comes Running Buck, who was a ranch hand, to help dump the body on the ranch that he worked on. But the rancher, Quinn, found out about it, and like he noticed a foul odor and started asking questions. So then they dug up his body. I know, this is crazy. And then put him in a large plastic tote and hid that tote in a truck for months before they finally buried the body. I don't know why Quinn, who apparently isn't a criminal at all, didn't say anything when they were like, oh yeah, we have this body buried, let us dig it up real quick. I don't know why he didn't say anything. I don't know if he was actually prosecuted for not coming forward with that information. No clue at all. But I do think that's really weird and just kind of gross to like keep digging up the body and then storing it somewhere and digging it up and storing it somewhere. Like, that's just fucked up. This murder resulted in a 12-day trial for Scott Dozier, and it resulted in a 22-year sentence in 2005. But Scott's story, and the story that he held until the day he died, was that he had found Green's body when he came home and that he had like overdosed, and so he disposed of the body to get rid of any evidence, and so like police wouldn't find his meth operation. But I think that you would be able to tell, maybe not after that long, if someone had overdosed and still, like, he still did something wrong because he hid a body. Like, you're not allowed to do that, obviously. So he still did something wrong, but maybe he didn't kill him. Maybe he did overdose. I don't know how you would prove that or not. But in the end, he still hid a body. That he was in prison for Jason Green's murder, he got extradited to Nevada to finally get to the case of the big one, Jeremiah Miller. Jeremiah Miller was a 22-year-old college student who attended Glendale Community College in Arizona and Arizona State University. He loved the outdoors, basketball, football, woodworking, landscaping, driving bobcats. He really wanted to be an elementary school teacher. He was completely fluent in Spanish. He actually went and built homes for Habitat for Humanity and really pushed to help underprivileged kids. Like, this was going to be a man who hopefully did a lot of great things in his life and really aspired to do amazing things. Jeremiah Miller was actually married to a woman named Martha Hernandez in January 2001, and they moved to Peoria, Arizona. But soon after starting to be with Martha, or soon after their marriage, he actually started to get involved with meth. And according to Jeremiah's friends, he got into meth because of Martha's family. And Jeremiah's family had no clue that he was doing meth or that he had started to, stop going to school. And, they were very close-knit. Like, they didn't see each other very often, but they talked a lot. And they had no suspicions that this was going on at all. But Miller was rapidly losing weight, and his friends that saw him often definitely noticed. At some point, Jeremiah and his wife had separated, and he started dating a new girl named Brandy Douglas. And Brandy is kind of a weird person in this case, and somebody I think should have been looked into a lot more. But Jeremiah was now very into the meth game and wanting to, start distributing himself. And so he borrowed $12,000 from a 60-year-old drug dealer named Grandpa. That's pretty much the only name I can find for him. Again, a very strange character who should have been looked further into this in this case, in my opinion. Miller and his new girlfriend Brandy took the $12,000 and they flew to Las Vegas to meet Scott Dozier for a drug deal, but it fell through, so they just came home. Not much later, though, Jeremiah flew himself on April 18th, and what he had gone to meet Scott for was not just meth itself, but the ingredient ephedrine, which is something that apparently is very important in making meth and kind of hard to find. So Jeremiah actually ended up flying out to Las Vegas on his own, and the next day he called Brandy on April 18th in the late night and said, okay, I did it, it's all good, I'll be home tomorrow, love you, bye. That was the last time that she heard from him. So when he didn't show back up home, Brandy actually called Scott because she knew who he was and where they would be meeting, and actually had gone the first time to meet with him at this hotel called the La Concha on the Las Vegas Strip. And a man answered. They assume it was Scott Dozier. They can't actually prove that, but the man said that Miller wasn't there and they'd left with some girl and hadn't seen him since. And during the trial, they actually found footage of Scott Dozier going into Best Buy and taking the $12,000 in cash that he had taken from Jeremiah Miller, and he bought a camcorder and gifts for his many girlfriends, and so they do have proof of that. Something I'd like to point out, though, is I don't know if this $12,000 was Scott's cut for it, or if that was the actual money he needed just for the ingredient. I don't know how that money was going to be distributed. I have no clue. I don't think anybody has any clue. So I think personally to say, oh, he had the money, so he must have killed Jeremiah Miller, is kind of far-fetched, because nobody knows what the agreements were with the money. And I don't know why Jeremiah would call his girlfriend and say, hey, we're all good, which means he would have gotten the ingredient at that point, right? And so it just doesn't make a lot of sense to me. But apparently, according to police and court records, as soon as Jeremiah Miller arrived, Scott shot him, and this is going to get graphic. He actually hung him in his shower and cut his neck to like help bleed him out, and then sawed his body into little pieces and then stuffed him in a suitcase. And he disposed of this suitcase at an apartment complex in western Las Vegas, and it took 1 week for somebody to discover the suitcase in the dumpster. In the suitcase was basically just the torso, his hands, feet, head. That was never found. And it didn't take police much work to figure out who this was, because Jeremiah Miller was already classified as a missing person because his parents noticed, hey, we haven't heard from him in a while. And they were very on top of this. Like, they were going out handing out flyers everywhere, like, you know, doing what they could to try and find their son. And he actually had some distinguishing tattoos on him. And so because they had the torso, they were actually able to see the tattoos and who it was. And it just took a couple weeks, and on June 25th, 2002, in Phoenix, Arizona, Scott Dozier was arrested for the killing of Jeremiah Miller. At the trial, Jeremiah Miller's family was super involved. They literally showed up every single day, not only to their own trial for their son, but for the trial of Jason Green. So even though just for a quick timeline, he killed Jason, he killed Jeremiah, then he got arrested for Jeremiah, convicted for Jason, and then went through court proceedings for Jeremiah. So it kind of goes back and forth a little bit. But they showed up every day to both of the court proceedings, and they really wanted to be there to like show their support for their son, who they loved, obviously very, very much. They really were hoping that in the trial that they could get Scott Dozier to tell them where the rest of Jeremiah's body was, but he never told anybody. This case gets really weird. So it hinges 100% on witness testimony, which, if you guys know anything, witness testimony is the most unreliable source that there is, and that sucks. And not only that, but all of the witnesses, in my opinion, aren't very reliable people. So we're going to go ahead and go through what some of the witnesses said, and these are the things that ultimately got him convicted. But I want you guys to make your own assumptions about this. So the first testimony came from Joe Walslager. I'm sorry if I'm looking down a lot. I'm just wanting to make sure I get everything right. And he had known Scott Dozier from the military, and he was also a meth user now. And he said that Scott called him breathless one night and said he had a guy in a suitcase and was on his way to the lake. He told Joe that Miller was sitting when he shot him, and that he got naked to avoid getting DNA on his clothes, hung Miller in the shower, and slit his throat to bleed him out, then proceeded with what he did. I don't know why anybody, and maybe this just is because I'm not a killer, but why would you kill someone and then call someone and be like, hey, guess what I did? Like, that seems stupid. Then there's Jerry Wimberly, one of Scott's users, so one of the people he dealt to. And he said that he had gone to see Scott at the La Concha to buy some meth, and that Scott asked him to see something, and that he saw a body in the bathtub with a decapitated head sitting on the chest and the shower running to wash it off, and he immediately recognized it as Miller because they had smoked together before. Again, why would you be going around showing people this? It doesn't make a lot of sense to me, especially because Scott was super intelligent. Like, they did IQ tests and stuff on him. He was an incredibly intelligent man. Also, apparently, Scott Dozier had told Joe that the head was in a 5-gallon bucket and would never be found, but he soon remembered he'd messed up because although there were no arms, leg, or head in the suitcase, there was still something very distinguishing: Miller's tattoos. So if Scott realized, like, oh fuck, I forgot that there's these tattoos, I don't know why he wouldn't go and pull the suitcase. Like, yeah, like, that's still dangerous, but I mean, I don't know what else he would do at that point. So that was really it, like, during the testimony. That's it. There's no other evidence besides these couple people coming forward and saying, Oh yeah, he showed me a body, which is so weird to say that Scott Dozier killed him. I want to come out and say I am not saying that he did or didn't. I am not a judge or an attorney or anything like that, obviously. I don't want Miller's family to be upset with me. I just think that the case needed a lot more evidence to come forward. And I'm not the only person who thinks that, because actually Scott Dozier's attorneys came to the court when this was all going on and said there's not enough evidence at all, especially to prove without reasonable doubt. Analysts had used leucocrital violet. I don't know how to pronounce that, but pretty much they use it to search for blood, and it's like even if something was cleaned, it would still show up. And they used this in every single room in the La Concha before it got knocked down, and they found 0 signs of blood, like nothing more than just like a couple drops, which could be from anything in the world. But there's about 1.5 gallons of blood in any human at a time. So I understand that he supposedly, drained his blood in the bathtub and so it would have run down the drain. But even if he shot him in the room, then there would have been blood somewhere, like no matter how much he cleaned it up. And there was also no evidence of like powder burn, stippling, or gun residue, which would be very present at a close range shot, even if Scott Dozier cleaned it up. You can't clean it up well enough. And they were saying like, hey, these witnesses are just, high, they're meth users, they're unreliable. And they were like, hey, why don't you guys look into this grandpa person who you guys have never questioned, and he's the one who is like missing $12,000 now if it fell through or whatever. So why aren't you guys looking at him? Why aren't you guys questioning him? He is never brought into court for any of this. And then also they thought that it was weird that Jeremiah Miller's girlfriend had gone to Vegas the first time but didn't the second time for like no reason really. So they're assuming that she like knew something was going to happen, but they again can't prove that. It's just very strange. The defense also asked, because there was a bloody Yankee jersey that was found cut up and stuffed in a bucket near the dumpster that Jeremiah Miller's body was found in, and it was never followed up on. The jersey matched for a female, but who was it? It could have been Brandy, it could have been anybody, and they just kind of like left this evidence there and just were like they took it with them, they just never tested it, like really. So I was like, what are you guys doing? Like, this is pertinent evidence. Like, if you're finding something blood covered next to a body, please test it as best as you can. Like, that doesn't make any sense. Nonetheless, though, and I really don't understand why, my personal opinion, guys, like, I really tried to be unbiased, and when I first started reading this case, I was like, oh yeah, this guy is so messed up, horrible person. And then I actually started reading into like the actual court part of it where the evidence was, and I was like, where's the evidence? He was convicted in September 2007 and received the death sentence on October 3rd, 2007. And now comes the part where Scott Dozier literally broke the world. On October 31st, 2016, he waived his appeals voluntarily and wrote letters to the district judge asking to be killed quicker. 10 days after this, Nevada announced a new lethal injection chamber at the Ely State Prison, which cost over $1 million. Ely is in eastern Nevada and is very, very secluded. Like, there's not much around there at all. And there is a max security prison there that opened in 1989. Scott got transferred to Ely from Carson City, which is the state capital here, so he just moved across the state. It's probably about 7 hours from Carson to Ely in September 2011. On July 27th, 2017, a judge finally signed Scott's death warrant permitting his execution in the week of October 16th, 2017. On August 17th, 2017, it got pushed back and was scheduled for 8 p.m. on November 14th, 2017. On November 9th, 2017, a judge stayed Scott's execution at the request of his lawyers so the state's proposed lethal injection plan could be appealed. On June 19th, 2018, the judge signed his death warrant again for it to take place on July 11th, 2018 at 8 p.m. They confirmed that the correct drugs were now in the state's possession and continued the scheduling. So during this time, and even now, there has been a lot of issues with the drugs used for lethal injection. Different companies saying, hey, I don't want you to use my drug in lethal injection anymore, so they were having to take it off the market, and then people were like, well, what do we do now? And then there was another drug that was being used, and it was like causing people to shake and stuff, and apparently that didn't mean like they were feeling pain. It was just kind of causing their nerves to freak out a little bit. And so midazolam was like, we don't want to be in this, and everyone's like, oh, lethal injection's super unethical. But when you think about what people did to their victims, it's not really that unethical. So they confirmed the drugs, they had him now, and everything was going to be okay. And honestly, Scott could not have been happier about this. He was doing interviews with Vice throughout his last like year, and he was saying like, if you say you're gonna fucking kill someone, fucking do it. Like, that's literally his words. And he said like, I don't want to die, and he doesn't want like anything I'm about to tell you to be construed as like him wanting to die. He said he would just rather be dead than doing this. And he got put into suicide watch in the prison. And when you get put in suicide watch, I don't know if you guys know this, you're in a room and it's not very big, but you don't have anything. And I know you don't have anything because you're not supposed to like kill yourself, but you also have no contact. So it's like, now you don't have any personal belongings. You can't read letters, look at family photos, anything like that, which obviously keeps a lot of people sane in there. You can't read any books, nothing like that. You can't talk to any of the other inmates or anything. And the lights are on all the time. He lost his mind, which I totally get, and he actually made an appeal to the court to please take him out of suicide watch because he was in the worst mental condition he'd ever been in his life due to the suicide watch. And the judge pretty much said, too bad, so sad. And then on July 11th, 2018, his execution was halted mere hours before it was supposed to take place by a Clark County, which is where Las Vegas is, district court judge. This was in response to the challenge by New Jersey-based pharmaceutical firm Alvogen, saying it didn't want anyone to use midazolam used in execution anymore. And then the companies Pfeiffer and Sandoz followed. They didn't want fentanyl and cisasteram to be used either. So literally on the day of his execution, everybody was like, you can't use our stuff anymore. And so his execution got shut down. He was so upset, and I can't blame him. If you guys watch his interviews at all, Scott is very at peace with what his sentence is. The reason he wanted to die rather than do this is because not of how it was really affecting him, but of how it was affecting his family and Miller's family. So now multiple times people were ready to watch their dad, their brother, their son, their friend die, and it kept getting pushed back, and that's very mentally fucking for the family. And he's like, it's all the innocent people that it makes me so upset for, you know, Jeremiah Miller's family, the residents of Nevada that are here waiting for me to die, and you guys won't let me die. And this is what I was talking about in the beginning, where I was saying there's a difference between states who offer, or not offer, but there's a difference between states who have the death sentence and states who use the death sentence. Nevada is not a state that actually uses its death sentence. And that sucks, because we're just holding it over their head for no reason, and we're just wasting millions of dollars on building things like our new lethal injection chamber and never using it. It's actually kind of spiked the whole thing though, because now a bunch of inmates all across the United States are literally begging to be like gunned down because they're just tired of waiting. They're like, I don't want to live anymore. And this was a big argument that Scott made. He said, the state says they want to kill me. I want to be dead. Why am I not dead? And on January 5th, 2019, so just the beginning of this year, almost a year ago now, Scott was found dead in his cell at Ely State Prison, and he had hung himself with his bedsheet attached to the air vent in his cell. He was 48 years old. I don't know what to think about Scott Dozier. I really, really don't. On one hand, yes, he obviously was a meth dealer, maker. None of those things are good things to be doing. On the other hand, though, all of the evidence is just witness statements from meth users, which I don't know why that's being considered super reliable or enough to put a man on death row who ultimately died. He held until the day he killed himself that he was innocent of Jeremiah Miller's murder. He didn't really talk about Jason Green's murder so much, but I think that's also because that wasn't the murder that was going to lead him to death. But I don't know. I don't know what to think. What do you guys think about this case? Do you think that him spending $12,000 in Best Buy when A, he's a drug dealer, he probably has some money lying around? I don't know. It's just so weird. I can't, like, I've been researching this case for like the last 2 weeks, and I've talked to so many people about it, and people are like, it's very obvious, and I just don't view it that way. I don't view it as very obvious, especially when there's no blood, no images, nothing linking this besides just some people saying, oh yeah, this dude showed me a body. Like, that just seems so stupid to me to do. I don't know. I guess I just think more rationally than that. What do you guys think about this? Do you guys think that Scott Dozier is guilty of killing Jeremiah Miller and Jason Green? One or the other? Both? I don't know. Do you think he deserved to be on death row? And what do you guys think about the death sentence? I know that's kind of like a really big question to ask, and please be respectful in the comments with your debate. I have obviously given my opinion throughout this case. I don't know if he did it or not. I think there needed to be a lot more evidence for a man to die. That is it for today though, guys. Thank you guys so much for watching and learning about Scott Dozier, Jeremiah Miller, and Jason Green. Let me know your guys' thoughts in the comments down below, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye!